You enter a conversation determined to talk about something that hurt you. Maybe your partner made a promise and later acted as though it had never happened. Maybe your mother humiliated you in front of the family. Maybe a sibling crossed a boundary you had already explained more than once. You know what happened. You remember the words, you remember the tone, you even remember how your body felt in that moment. But a few minutes into the conversation, you are the one defending yourself. The conversation ends, the other person appears calm. And you are left alone, replaying every sentence, trying to understand when everything changed direction. Then the doubt begins. Did I overreact? This is one of the most damaging aspects of relationships, shaped by narcissistic behavior. It is not only about being hurt. It is about being slowly pushed into doubting whether the injury happened at all. The pattern often begins quietly. You mention something specific. You said that yesterday. But instead of addressing what was said, the other person attacks your perception. I never said that. You misunderstood me. You always twist everything. And when denial is no longer convincing, they minimize what happened. It was only a joke. You take everything personally. You are too sensitive. Notice what has happened. The conversation is no longer about their behavior. Now the problem is your memory, your interpretation, or your emotional reaction. When this happens repeatedly, you may begin to distrust your own perception. In a romantic relationship, you might start saving messages, rereading conversations, and rehearsing every sentence before speaking. You begin to believe that if you present enough evidence and remain perfectly calm, you will finally be understood. In a family relationship, the confusion can run even deeper. A father describes constant criticism as preparation for the real world. A mother disguises control as concern. A sibling provokes you for years, but when you finally react, the entire family focuses only on your reaction. The context disappears. And suddenly, you become the problem. Manipulation does not always require denying the facts. Sometimes, changing the subject is enough. You talk about a lie. They talk about your tone of voice. You talk about being humiliated. They bring up a mistake you made years ago. You ask for a boundary to be respected. They accuse you of being selfish, ungrateful, or cruel. The conversation moves further and further away from the original issue. Nothing is resolved. You simply become more exhausted, more confused, and more ashamed. And eventually, you apologize. Not because you have realized you were wrong, but because you need the conflict to end. What makes this cycle even harder to recognize is that the other person is not always cold or aggressive. After the argument, they may become affectionate again. They may behave as though nothing happened. They may offer you exactly the warmth you had been trying to recover. And that restores your hope. You begin to think it was only a bad moment. Maybe this time they finally understood. But after a while, the same pattern returns. The affection does not repair the relationship. It only makes the cycle more difficult to see. This does not mean that everyone who denies a conversation or avoids responsibility is necessarily a narcissist. A psychological diagnosis cannot be made through a video, a checklist, or a few isolated behaviors. So the most useful question may not be, is this person a narcissist? A more important question is, what repeatedly happens to me after these conversations? Do you usually leave feeling confused? Do you feel compelled to prove basic events? Are you afraid to speak because you know your reaction will be used against you? Are your feelings dismissed as drama, exaggeration, or ingratitude? Do you spend more time defending your perception than discussing what actually happened? Look for patterns, not isolated incidents. Write down what happened to preserve your own clarity, not to win an argument. Speak with someone you trust. And remember this: you do not need another person's agreement to recognize that a boundary has been crossed. Maybe you have spent years searching for the perfect words, speaking more calmly, waiting for the right moment, trying to explain yourself in a way that could no longer be ignored. But some conversations do not fail because you expressed yourself poorly. They fail because acknowledging your pain would require the other person to accept responsibility. Perhaps the first step is not making them understand. Perhaps the first step is learning to trust what you saw, what you felt, and what this relationship is doing to your life. If this video helped you recognize this pattern, subscribe to the channel. In the next episodes, we will explore other dynamics found in romantic and family relationships. The silent treatment, guilt used as control, the cycle between affection and contempt, and what happens when you finally begin to set boundaries. Because understanding the pattern cannot change the past, but it may stop you from continuing to lose yourself inside it.